As you sit here today, do you have any question about who introduced the live ammunition to the set of Rust?
No.
Who do you believe it was based on your investigation?
Hannah.
Okay, that was lead investigator Alexandria Hancock. Not from today. She was called by the prosecution to give insight into the trial of Alec Baldwin. You saw him in the background there, obviously the producer and the star of the movie Rust. She also testified in the trial against Rust armorer Hannah Gutierrez-Reed. Now, you heard her say that she believed that Hannah Gutierrez-Reed was the one who brought the live ammunition on the movie set. Since she was the lead investigator there, she interviewed different members at the crime scene to get a better understanding of what happened that day when Rust cinematographer Halyna Hutchins was fatally shot. She interviewed the defendant in the case, Alec Baldwin, and if he, of course, is accused of the involuntary manslaughter in the fatal Rust movie shooting on the set there. He's a well-known actor, also producer in this matter, and he discharged a live round on the set. However, Baldwin says, no, he did not pull the trigger, and he thought the gun was cold, as he had been told. And so he's pled not guilty to the involuntary manslaughter charge. And he's convicted, looking at a max of 18 months in prison, as Hannah Gutierrez-Reed is now serving. So that was back in March when she was determined to be guilty of that same charge. So we thought she was going to testify today, but now she is not going to testify. She will not be taking the stand. So that was a snippet of Hancock on the stand from earlier in the trial yesterday. She's going to be back on the stand again, because now she's going to testify outside the presence of the jury. But we need to talk about what she saw Hannah Gutierrez-Reed do in her investigation. So let's go back into more of that testimony.
Ms. Gutierrez indicated that she brought that box of ammunition on the set. Is that right?
That it was similar to one that she would have provided.
During that interview, did she produce a photograph for you?
She did.
And the photograph that she produced, did she tell you where she got it?
I don't know if she said in that interview exactly where she got it, but she did describe it to be a box like that was in the photo would be what she provided.
And the photograph that she showed you during the interview, did it match exactly the label on the box that contained the live ammunition?
Yes.
As you sit here today, do you have any question about who introduced the live ammunition to the set of Rust?
No.
Who do you believe it was based on your investigation?
Hannah.
Okay, once again, that is testimony from yesterday. I hope she wears different clothes today, because it'd be far less confusing. She's supposed to testify in this hearing outside the presence of the jury about probably the chain of custody of thehese magic bullets that have now shown up, and the defense says, hey, we never got the stuff, we need a motion to dismiss. So Catherine Lizardo is still here, and Dave Ehrenberg. So Catherine, as we wait for them to get the housekeeping done here, and it is, a time-consuming process. We only got 2 witnesses that were lining up, but this was not in the schedule. So talk about just the issues that the court has to deal with on a practical level. These are real. This is real time. The trial is a living, breathing thing, and right now it's kind of on life support.
This is the interesting part of a trial, because we don't just look at the rules of evidence here now. We're talking about real life, like you said. So what's happening behind the scene? When the judge told both parties, I want to hear from Hancock, I want to hear from Seth Kenny, who was the weapon supplier, that means they had to contact these witnesses wherever they were at, because they were not planning to be there in court, and tell them, you have to rush over here in court and testify and talk to the judge. So that's for me, it's the exciting behind the scene, because I don't know if they were in court or close by. They have to bring them in before the end of the day so that they can provide the testimony needed to whether or not this case will be dismissed because of the ammunition issue we're talking about.
And it should be a pretty fine-tuned analysis. I think, tell me if I'm right or wrong here, producer Alicia, is that Ms. Alexander that she just kind of ducked out of the screen on what was on the lower shot there? She's wearing the yellow jacket. Thank goodness it's a different outfit. So, Dave, what do you expect? This, again, has to be surgical. What kind of testimony are we going to get from this specific witness?
The law enforcement or the...
Yeah, the investigator. She was the lead investigator, Corporal Hancock.
You're going to show chain of custody and what they knew and who they learned this from and whether they spoke to the prosecutors. So whether they implicate the prosecutors in some grand scheme. But Michael, as you said, they're not going to stand up and say, yeah, we tried to cover it up. After all, if they try to cover this up, why? It's not like this is life or death evidence. This is not even possibly even relevant evidence. Although it's not up to the prosecutor to decide what's relevant. It's up to the
Wouldn't that be
court.
easier for the whole system if the prosecutor got to decide whether it's relevant or not?
Yes, but this is about whether Alec Baldwin pulled the trigger, whether he had gun safety. Whether there were additional dummy rounds or live rounds on the set really doesn't go to the main issue here. It's not material. That's what the prosecutor is going to say. They're going to say, we didn't know about this. We're just learning about it. And besides, why would we lie about something that's not even material to our case? So please, give us a pass.
Yeah, and the prosecutor, I think, would be more concerned if this was playing out in front of the jury. As Catherine rightly says, you don't want to, tick off the judge, and if it starts to trickle into how the judge handles the case, subliminally or subconsciously may favor one side or the other, we never want to see that, and hopefully it doesn't happen. But they get annoyed. It's a human being, and they're trying to run this thing in an organized way, a very scheduled way, maybe too scheduled. But it looks like you can see kind of a Baldwin moment there with Hilaria, his support system, who's been in the courtroom virtually every day, along with other family members. I have to think, Catherine, that to them, this is a good day so far. What do you think?
I think so, because the motion to dismiss that they brought is really taking over the entire day. There was supposed to be testimony happening, but now the jury was sent home and come back on Monday. So the focus is on the motion to dismiss, which is so critical for them for obvious reason that if the judge rules for it, then there's a mistrial and the case goes.
Okay, so we obviously we don't have a fan in this case like Karen Reed. We got the exit sign. So they're taking another little break, obviously orchestrating what they need to do to get both Corporal Hancock on the stand and then Seth Kenney to talk about this evidentiary issue. In the meantime, let's listen now to Hancock again. This is from yesterday. She explains why Alec Baldwin was initially arrested but not charged.
Let me ask you this. The live ammunition that was collected from PDQ, did it just visibly look dissimilar to the live ammunition from Rust?
Yes.
Even though it looked dissimilar, did you send it to the FBI for testing anyway?
We did.
Did you ever discover any evidence throughout your entire investigation that Seth Kenney supplied live rounds to the set of Rust?
No.
Did you ever discover any evidence that Seth Kenney was present on the set of Rust until you met him at the prop truck?
No.
During your investigation, did you ever discover any evidence that Mr. Kenney modified or altered the gun that was provided to Mr. Baldwin?
No.
Did you ever discover any evidence that Ms. Gutierrez modified or altered the gun that was provided to Mr. Baldwin?
No.
Did you ever formally arrest Ms. Gutierrez?
No.
Does that have anything to do with whether or not she was ultimately convicted of a crime?
No.
Did you ever arrest Dave Halls?
No.
Do you know whether or not he was convicted of a crime at some point?
Yes, he was.
And the fact that you arrested him or didn't arrest him, did that have anything to do with it?
No.
Does as a law enforcement officer, do you always arrest people who then later are criminally charged?
Sorry, you mean like arrest them right away? And
Do they have to be arrested in order to be criminally charged?
No.
Why would you not arrest someone?
To develop the investigation, if we're still waiting or investigating facts, trying to find information, and to get potential suspects or witnesses, whoever is involved, to cooperate with law enforcement.
Who makes the final charging decision in a criminal case?
The district attorney's office, essentially.
The prosecutor does, right?
Yes.
You guys don't. The law enforcement officers don't, correct?
Right.
Okay, again, testimony from yesterday in the case in front of the jury, but the same witness, Ms. Hancock, the corporal, lead investigator, is going to be back on the stand momentarily in the hearing stage for the motion to dismiss brought by the defense earlier today, and just first thing this morning. Surprise! So, Catherine Lizardo's here. Dave Ehrenberg's with me on set. Dave, when we see this witness testify, give me your thoughts on her as a witness, credibility, talking about procedure. What are your thoughts?
Credibility is in the eye of the beholder. I think she looks credible. I mean, she doesn't have an axe to grind here. She's just
But she could be challenged. She's like, you guys screwed up. That's what's going to be coming at her.
Sure. Screw up is different than nefariousness. Was it intentional? Because that's the difference between getting yelled at by the judge and getting a case dismissed. If it's just an accident over something that's not even material evidence, then they're going to survive this. If it is something that is proven to be, insidious and nefarious, to use some good SAT words, then I think the case is gone. But I cannot imagine a high-profile case like this, that this is a big conspiracy to hide evidence that really isn't even that important to the case.
So, Catherine, let me get back to the crux of the case. Here's my closing argument. It takes 15, 20 seconds for Alec Baldwin to look at that gun when it's handed to him as a cold gun and confirm whether or not it is cold. So, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is 15 seconds of Alec Baldwin's life more important than the life of Halyna Hutchins? That's all he had to do to prevent this tragedy. How do you work around that if you're the defense?
Honestly, if I'm a defense, I'd really have a hard time arguing against that, because I agree with you, Michael, in terms of that 15 seconds. And on top of that, cardinal rule for handling gun is not to point the gun at any person at all, whether or not you believe there's a blank ammunition, whether or not you feel there's an ammunition at all in there. You do not point it. Now, we were talking about this is a movie set, and that is usually done. But it's my understanding that when he pointed at Hannah, it was not during a rehearsal or anything like that. That's what the prosecution is trying to argue. So we will hear more evidence about that to prove that that was the case, that this happened when he was ignoring safety, gun safety issues, and was just reckless in handling the gun, that eventually killed I'm sorry, I couldn't say her name because of my accent, but eventually killed her. And so that's the issue here.
Yeah, and I think, we can circle back to the whole prosecutorial issue where the indictment was flawed, and that's why there's no evidence allowed in regarding Alec Baldwin as the producer, because the two counts of involuntary manslaughter, they're pleading in the alternative. One is reckless handling of the gun, the other is conscious disregard of the safety of others, but they all relate to him as an actor. So that producer argument was going to be so good in this case, and unless the defense opens the door, he's shielded from that, which is amazing. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to catch up as they wait to do the witnesses for this motion to dismiss hearing. We'll bring you up to speed on some of the arguments from that hearing. Took place a little bit earlier this morning. We'll be right back.